being called Fortress Toronto. Several downtown blocks of Canada's largest and most populous city have been wrapped in more than 6 kilometers of zinc-coated fencing. Pounding the pavements in and around the 3-meter-tall barriers are thousands of officers who are keeping a watchful eye out for any potential threats as the leaders of the world's largest economies meet in Toronto for the G20 summit. The billion-dollar price tag for security alone is a controversy the government is struggling to contain.
So many things could have been done with that money. And am I upset? Yes, I'm upset.
Good afternoon. As of right now, if you need to be downtown, you need to be ready to identify yourself.
That's right, because police have some new powers. If you are within 5 meters of the outside of the security fence, you're going to be asked for ID. If you refuse, you can walk away and leave the area, but if you refuse and you stay, you could be arrested. CTV's Paul Bliss joins us now from Queen's Park. Paul, you were just down at police headquarters where Chief Blair was speaking with reporters, and the chief says these arrest powers are not new. They go back to perhaps 1939.
Yeah, the chief and I had a bit of an exchange going this morning because I was trying to get clarification from him. The act that grants the police these powers has been in effect for decades. However, these powers were only granted to police on June the 2nd. But the problem was it was done without police or the government notifying anybody. Essentially what happened is the chief went to the politicians, the Liberal government at Queen's Park, and said, I need special permission under an act that the government has. It's called the Public Works Protection Act. He says, I want to be able to arrest anyone within 5 meters of the fence if they don't provide proper identification, if they don't allow me to do a search.
We know that securing Toronto city centre against all those anarchists and terrorists can get very boring, so we are here to remind you that everything is okay, that we are on your side. We are the love police, and our job is to lower fear and raise love.
We can ask them to leave, and as you all now know, we have the authority to ask them to leave the interior of the perimeter area and 5 meters from that fence.
You're within 5 meters of this wall, so please turn off your video camera.
We can't film within 5 meters of the wall?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Public Works Act states that, so please.
Because
we're show your identification to these officers.
Failure to identify yourself under the Public Works Act is going to end up in you guys being arrested.
They will not be arrested. They have a right to not identify themselves. Again, I would invite you to read the act because what you're saying is not true.
Right? So, who's got...
Is he being detained right now, or...?
He's just talking. Same thing that... I've asked you to stop filming, brother. Come on.
Let me clarify it for you. By all means, if someone comes to the fence and seeks entry, they will be asked to identify themselves. If they refuse, and they have a right to refuse, then they may leave. And they will leave without being arrested. If, on the other hand, they try to force their way in, they can be prevented from entering. That's a very different thing than what you have described.
Okay, so your friend didn't want to tell the police who he was, so he's been arrested for the time being, okay? All right, right now he's just been arrested.
So what's the arrest for?
For failing to identify himself.
On Tuesday, it emerged that special police powers that the media reported had been given to police for the duration of the summit, powers that the Globe and Mail suggested were unlimited, had in fact never been given. Although a temporary regulation was passed in secret on June 2nd, making the fenced-off security zone around the summit subject to the Ontario Public Works Protection Act, the so-called 5-meter zone that supposedly gave police the right to demand identification from anyone within 5 meters of the fence never existed. When asked on Tuesday if the 5-meter rule had been in effect, Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair said, quote, "No, but I was trying to keep the criminals out," end quote.
There's no official protest here today yet. The big one is tomorrow, but already we're seeing some evidence that police are using that new power that they have under the new regulation. Joining us now is Tara. She's you were here in the park earlier. What happened to you? Did police say something about this new rule?
Well, basically, we had just met in the middle of the park. We sat down to exchange some phone numbers, and within about 10 seconds, about 10 police officers had surrounded us, had basically asked us to open our bags so they could search them. And my two friends said they did not consent to the search, and they enacted basically the new Public Works Act. and said, you have to basically open your bags and we have to be able to search them. So they searched our bags, also asked for our identification, and wrote down all of our identification as well as phone numbers.
When they mentioned this new Public Works Act, what did they say about it? Did they say, well, we can arrest you, or what?
They basically told us that it allowed them to open anything and search anything on public grounds. As to what public grounds means, they weren't really clear, but they said anything that was considered a public place, they could ask for identification and could search us. But there's no protesters in the park today, and so I was just kind of shocked that 10 police were surrounding us when we were writing down phone numbers.
Well, what about the fact that there is no fence here? I mean, a lot of the explanation was that if you're within 5 meters of the fence, you could be searched. There's no fence here.
I'm not sure why exactly we were searched, and in fact, there was no fence here. I haven't seen a fence for at least a couple kilometers, so I'm not quite sure why we're being searched here or why there is so much police presence, but we definitely, this act was invoked on us.
What this legislation does on its face is that it gives the police the authority to ask a citizen to identify themselves who happen to be in downtown Toronto, and they've designated a whole area of downtown Toronto. And to have a police with the authority to force you to identify yourself without any cause whatever is frightening. And then it goes on to give them authority to search the person without any cause.
Which means the whole right to privacy and right to probable cause is gone on the search. You just have to be within an area.
Within that approach, as it's called.
As we'll learn later, that's a pretty flexible thing. Just what is that area?
That's right. So they could designate, for example, the whole of downtown Toronto as a public work, and then public protest would be prohibited.
I think it's kind of also extraordinary. It's not just police officers who can enforce this act. It's something they're calling guards. But the most important thing that then leads to is every person who gets appointed this way has the powers of a peace officer. They can turn almost anybody they want into a policeman.
That's right. And of course, we saw earlier this week or the previous week where there were a number of private security people that were going to come to Toronto to deal with the G20, and they weren't even licensed in Ontario, so that we've got people here that could be not licensed or they're quickly licensed. In other words, if people read that if they went downtown to protest, that some rent-a-cop guard could arrest them for whatever, neglecting to follow their instructions, then people may say, you know what, I don't need that. I think I'll stay home and so on. So the chilling effect is also crucial.
So the right of free assembly can be gone in a snap of cabinet's fingers.
In effect, a snap of cabinet's fingers behind closed doors.
This is pretty dramatic stuff, because the law was not only passed in secret, but it was kept secret. This is the stuff that Kafka wrote novels about. Secret laws that the citizenry isn't aware of are the hallmarks of tin pot dictatorships.
Okay guys, this is my undertaking to appear. There's me, and I got arrested on the 24th of June. Neglect to comply with the direction of a peace officer. Because I've broken the law, Public Works Act, brand new law, just to fuck over people like myself, Section 5.1. Yeah, so here I am outside the old courthouse in central Toronto. They held me for 20 hours following my arrest yesterday at 3 p.m. by Staff Sergeant Reynolds, badge number 3061, on the most bullshit charge of not providing my ID when asked to do so by an officer of the law. The guy didn't really give me a chance to give my ID. I tried to reason with him for a second. The next thing you know, the handcuffs are thrown on. I get taken into a holding cell, into a pen, where I was handcuffed with the cuffs behind my back for 4 hours, and they wouldn't loosen or release me from the cuffs. Even when I went to the bathroom, I still had to wear the handcuffs. I'm slightly traumatized by the whole event because they really treated me with absolute discourtesy and disrespect. I got taken after my 5 hours in the cuffs to the Toronto Film Studios, where they set up this massive warehouse where they're holding G20 Toronto protesters prisoner. And it was, as I keep saying, very traumatic. It's very, very scary when you're by yourself in that situation. I'm out, I'm safe. They didn't rape me, only mentally. So I'll see you all soon. Take care.
All